afternoon and welcome to this video today. So today we'll be looking at the brain, the function and diagnosis of the brain diseases and their treatments, etc. Why is the brain important? Because of thoughts and decisions, memories, emotions, movement, balance, coordination, your perception including pain, breathing, heart rate, sleep, temperature control, regulating your organ function, speech and language functions, and also your fight or flight response to stress, which is very important. As you can see here, the main parts of the brain can be divided into the brainstem, cerebellum, and cerebrum. The cerebrum is incidentally the largest part of the brain. With regards to the anatomy of the brain, this consists of three parts: the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. You can see the other parts divided in here at the side. Frontal lobe, corpus callosum, thalamus, hypothalamus, midbrain, pons, medulla, spinal cord, etc. So we'll look into anatomy a bit more further as well here. So we have the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, the temporal lobe, the cerebellum, and the spinal cord. So let's look firstly at the hindbrain. So the hindbrain is the posterior part position at the lower rear of the part of the brain. It's responsible for basic psychological processes and motor skills. Composed of three main parts: cerebellum, medulla oblongata, and pons. The cerebellum is involved in coordination, posture, and motor learning. The medulla oblongata is involved in breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. And the pons acts as a bridge between different parts of the brain and helps coordinate movements. Looking at the midbrain, it's a small part of the brainstem which is situated between the forebrain and the hindbrain. It acts as a relay centre for auditory, visual, and motor information. Some parts involved is called the tectum and the tegmentum. So the tectum is the upper part responsible for visual and auditory reflexes. The tegmentum is the lower part involved in movement and some sensory functions, and it also plays a role in motor movement, sensory processing, arousal, wakefulness, pain perception, and modulation. So the forebrain occupies the largest area of the brain, and at this frontal portion governs the complex cognitive processes and regulating various physiological functions. So these are the various components involved in the forebrain: the cerebrum, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, and amygdala. So as you can see here on the right hand side of the diagram, so the thalamus, hypothalamus, amygdala, and hippocampus are collectively known as the limbic system. So I said it earlier before, the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. It's a dominant structure divided into two hemispheres, left and right. It manages the high order brain functions such as consciousness, thought, reasoning, problem solving, voluntary movements. It's also involved in processing sensory information and controlling emotions, memory, and language. And it consists of four lobes: the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. The frontal lobe is involved in decision making. Parietal lobe is for sensory. Temporal lobe is for auditory, and occipital lobe is for visual. The thalamus, on the other hand, serves as a sensory relay station which directs sensory information and sends smell to the cerebral cortex. It regulates consciousness, alertness, and relays sensory and motor signals between the spinal cord and cerebrum. The hypothalamus is involved in maintaining the homeostasis by regulating the body temperature, hunger, thirst, and sleep-wake cycle. This also influences emotions in the autonomic nervous system. Cranium surrounds your brain, and your cranium is part of your skull. All the bones in your skull protect your brain from injury. Between your brain and your skull, you have three layers of tissues called the meninges. And this is composed of three components: the dura mater, the arachnoid mater, and the pia mater. So the dura mater is the outermost layer lines which lines your entire skull, and parts of the dura mater form folds that separate the right half of your brain from the left. The arachnoid is the middle layer of the meninges, is known as a thin, fragile layer of tissue that covers your entire brain. And the pia mater is the innermost layer which contains blood vessels that run into your brain surface. So between your arachnoid and pia mater tissue is a clear substance called your cerebrospinal fluid. This surrounds your spinal cord, which runs through the bones of your spine. It cushions and protects these vital system organs. Substances as well as grey and white matter also make up your central nervous system. In your brain, grey matter is the outermost layer and plays a significant part in your day-to-day function. White matter is your deeper brain tissue. It contains nerve fibres that help your brain send electric nerve signals more quickly and efficiently. So let's move on to cells of the brain. So cells of the brain are essentially neurons and glia. Neurons are the nerve cells that send and receive signals. Glia are cells that provide structure in the brain. Neurons are also information messengers, and they use electrical and chemical signals to send information between different areas of the brain. as well as between the brain, the spinal cord, and the entire body. Everything we think we do, we feel we do, would be impossible without the work of neurons and their support cells, the glial cells, known as astrocytes and oligodendrocytes. So a neuron has three basic parts: a cell body and two branches called an axon and a dendrite. Within the cell body is a nucleus which controls the cell's activities and contains the genetic material. The axon looks like a long tail and sends messages from the cell. A dendrite looks like the branch of a tree and receives messages for the cell. Neurons communicate with each other by sending chemicals called neurotransmitters across a tiny space called a synapse between the axons and dendrites of nearby neurons. So there are various different types of glia in the brain, such as oligodendrocytes, microglia, and astrocytes. Oligodendrocytes are defined as specialized cells which wrap tightly around the axons to form the myelin sheath. These cells speed up the electrical signals, action potentials which travel down an axon. If there were no oligodendrocytes, an action potential would travel down an axon 30 times slower. Microglia, on the other hand, are special immune cells that are found only in the brain which can detect damage or unhealthy neurons. They eat foreign invaders such as bacteria and viruses, then display the chewed up parts on their cell surface to signal for help. Astrocytes are star-shaped glia which hold neurons in place, supply nutrients and digest parts of dead neurons. Astrocytes actually have the ability to communicate with neurons and modify the signals they send and receive. That means astrocytes are much more involved than we once thought in both the process of information and the signaling at the synapse. As you can see here, there are three different types of neurons: the motor neuron, the sensory neuron, and the interneuron. So the sensory neurons carry information from the sense organs such as the eyes and the ears to the brain. The motor neurons control voluntary muscle activity such as walking, talking, and carry messages from nerve cells in the brain to the muscles, and the other neurons are called interneurons. So here's the diagram of a neuron. As you can see, the cell body, the myelin sheath covering, and the dendrites. So let's look at neurons a bit more, right? So neurons are the fundamental building blocks of the nervous system. They consist of cell bodies containing nucleus, dendrites receiving signals, and an axon transmitting signals. There are myelin sheath and the axons, which cover the axons and speeds transmission. And the impulses transmit electrical and chemical signals known as action potentials through the nervous system, facilitating communication. So I can see this diagram here. So the dendrites, the cell body, the nucleus, the axons, the myelin sheath, and the axon terminal. So let's have a look at synapses. So synapses are the specialized junctions which enable communication between neurons. There are two types of synapses: chemical synapses and electrical synapses. Chemical synapses are the most common and involve neurotransmitters to relay signals. Electrical synapses involve direct flow of ions between neurons, transmitting signals more rapidly. Neurons and synapses form intricate networks, allowing for complex information processing, memory formation, learning, and behavior regulation. Let's now have a look at neurotransmitters. So there are different types: excitatory, inhibitory, and modulatory. So excitatory have excitatory effects on the neurons, meaning they increase the likelihood that a neuron will fire an action potential. The examples are epinephrine and norepinephrine. Inhibitory neurotransmitters have inhibitory effects on the neuron. They decrease the likelihood that the neuron will fire an action potential, and these involve serotonin and GABA, also known as gamma aminobutyric acid. There are modulatory neurotransmitters, which are referred to as neuromodulators, which are capable of affecting a larger number of neurons at the same time. These neuromodulators also influence the effects of other chemical messengers. If synaptic neurotransmitters are released by axon terminals to have a fast-acting impact on other receptor neurons, neuromodulators diffuse across a larger area and are more slow-acting. And these involve acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, histamine, and cannabinoids. So neurotransmitters can be categorized into one of 6 types. One of the types is amino acids, such as GABA, which contributes to the vision and motor control, also playing a role in the regulation of anxiety. Benzodiazepines, which are used to help treat anxiety, function by increasing the efficiency of GABA neurotransmitters, and this can increase feelings and relaxation of calm. Glutamate plays a role in cognitive functions such as memory and learning. Excessive amounts of glutamate can cause excitotoxicity, resulting in cellular death. This cytotoxicity caused by glutamate buildup is associated with some diseases and brain injuries, including Alzheimer's, stroke, and epilepsy. These are two of the other categories are peptides and endorphins. So peptides such as oxytocin act as a neurotransmitter in the brain. They are produced by the hypothalamus and play a role in social recognition, bonding, and sexual reproduction. Endorphins, on the other hand, inhibit the transmission of pain signals and promote feelings of euphoria, happiness. These chemical messages are produced naturally by the body in response to pain, but can also be triggered by other activities such as aerobic exercise. Looking at monoamines like epinephrine, this is a stress hormone that is released by the adrenal system. Norepinephrine plays a role in alertness as involved in the body's flight or fight response. This role is to help mobilize the body and brain to take actions in time of dangers or stress. Levels of this is typically quite lowest during sleep and highest during times of stress. Histamine plays a role in allergic reactions that are produced as part of the immune system's response to pathogens. Dopamine is involved in reward, motivation, and additions. It plays a role in coordination of body movements. Example is Parkinson's disease, which is a degenerative disease that results in tremors and motor movement impairments. It's caused by a loss of dopamine generating neurons in the brain. Serotonin plays an important role in regulating and modulating mood, sleep, anxiety, sexuality, and appetite. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors are a type of antidepressant medication commonly prescribed to treat depression, anxiety, panic disorder, and panic attacks. They work to balance serotonin levels by blocking the reuptake of serotonin in the brain, which can help improve mood and feelings of anxiety. Looking now at purines, these are naturally occurring chemicals such as adenosine, which acts as a neuromodulator in the brain, involved in suppressing, arousing, and improving sleep. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, acts as a neurotransmitter in the central and peripheral nervous system, plays a role in autonomic control, sensory transduction, and communication with glial cells. It can also have a role in some neurological problems, including pain, trauma, and neurodegenerative disorders. Oxide plays a role in affecting smooth muscles, relaxing them to allow blood vessels to dilate, increasing blood flow to certain areas of the body. Carbon monoxide is toxic and potentially fatal. It's produced naturally by the body where it acts as a neurotransmitter that helps modulate the body's inflammatory response. And acetylcholine, which is found both in the central and peripheral nervous systems, is the primary neurotransmitter associated with motor neurons. It plays a role in muscle movements as well as memory and learning. What can go wrong? Neurons might not manufacture enough of a particular neurotransmitter. They might be reabsorbed too quickly. Too many neurotransmitters may be deactivated by enzymes, and too much of a neurotransmitter can be released. So in the next few slides, we'll be looking at the types of diseases that can occur within the brain. Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So this is a loss of cognitive brain functions as it goes along, such as memory, problem solving, or language. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis is a neuromuscular disorder where the nerve cells in your brain break down. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disorder which can affect your ability to communicate, regulate behaviour, and interpret social cues. Brain tumour, irregular mass of cells which starts in your brain and grows uncontrollably, and there'll be a video on that produced in future. Epilepsy, a brain disorder that disrupts the activity of your brain's nerve cells leading to seizures. Parkinson's disease is a neurological condition resulting from loss of dopamine producing brain cells, affecting motor functions, causing tremors, stiffness, and difficulty in movement. Multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease affecting the central nervous system, causing nerve damage and disrupting communication between the brain and the body. And stroke is an interruption of blood supply to your brain, either because of an artery blockage or a burst artery, otherwise known as an artery rupture. Two diseases I mentioned previously, let's look at a bit more depth. So neurons that produce the neurotransmitter dopamine die off in the basal ganglia, an area of the brain that controls body movements. This occurs in Parkinson's disease. This causes people with Parkinson's to experience shaking, to move more slowly, and to have problems with balance. With regards to Huntington's disease, a genetic mutation causes neurons to create too much of a neurotransmitter called glutamate. So that's a triplet expansion of this. I think it's the CAG nucleotide codon, which kills the neurons in the basal ganglia. You can twist and move uncontrollably, and over time you lose the ability to do many everyday tasks such as walking and eating. People with this disease have typically shorter lives. Alzheimer's disease involves unusual proteins building up in and around the neurons in the neocortex and hippocampus, the parts of the brain that control memory. When these neurons die, people lose their ability to remember and do everyday tasks. With regards to physical damage, this can also kill or disable neurons, and damage to the brain caused by shaking or hitting the head or because of a stroke can kill neurons immediately or slowly, starving of the oxygen and nutrients they need to survive. And finally, with regards to diseases, spinal cord injury can cut off the communication between the brain and the muscles. When neurons lose their connection to the axons, parts of the neurons that send messages to other neurons, located below at the site of injury, the neurons may still live, but they lose their ability to communicate. So let's look at the dangers of brain disorders: physical impairments, cognitive impairments, emotional and behavioural changes, social isolation. So physical impairments can be paralysis, tremors, and difficulty of coordination. Cognitive functioning could be affected, including memory loss, difficulty with language, and problems of attention and concentration. Emotional and behavioural changes, including depression, anxiety, and irritability. And it's difficult for individuals to socialise and engage in everyday activities, leading to social isolation and a lower quality of life. How are brain disorders diagnosed? You can have a neurological exam, which looks at your reflexes, muscle strength, coordination, and balance. You can have imaging tests such as CT scans, MRI scans, and PET scans, which can provide detailed pictures of the brain structure and function, helping to identify abnormalities or damage. You can have neuropsychological testing, which assesses cognitive functioning such as memory, attention, and language skills, providing a comprehensive evaluation of brain function. You can have blood tests, which can be used to identify infections, inflammation, other underlying medical conditions which may be causing brain dysfunction. For brain disorders, as usual, medications, right, for target specific symptoms, underlying conditions. Therapy, such as cognitive behavioural therapy for individuals with emotional or behavioural symptoms related to brain disorders. Rehabilitation for individuals with physical impairments caused by brain disorders, helping to improve motor function, overall quality of life. And surgery, which can be used which may be necessary to remove tumours or alleviate pressure on the brain caused by swelling or bleeding. That's the end of the video today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below asking what sort of videos you would like next, and I'll be happy to do them. I'm really hoping you're enjoying the content, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon on the next video. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.